Welcome to the London Free Press Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Gilbert. The Western Mustangs football team is off to the UTEC Bowl this weekend after beating Laurier in the Yates Cup last weekend. So today I'm talking with London Free Press sports reporter Ryan Pyette about the Mustangs' chances against Montreal and if they can make it to this year's Vanier Cup. Hey, Ryan, how are you?
I'm great, Rachel. Thanks.
Good. Let's start with last weekend's game. This was a pretty awesome victory against Laurier, 29-14. And Western was trailing at the halftime mark. So what happened? How did they come back and win this?
Uh, Halftime adjustments. Greg Marshall's second to none in university football in Canada, and he did it again. He went in at halftime. The boys said and said, "Look, we're going to keep, even though Evan Hillock got hurt. He hurt his left arm again against Laurier. He was banged up. So they said, we're going to run the football. We're going to keep running it. And they ran it 44 times for nearly 300 yards. And it was a typical, we've seen this for, 50 years now. It was a typical Western. They ran the ball down Laurier's throat. Nobody knew if they could. And they still did it anyway. And they scored one touchdown and, 6 field goals, couple of safeties. And that's all. This is kind of, I go back to the nights when Brett Brochu got hurt last year, and Sarnia had every opportunity to beat them and still couldn't. But
Right.
Dale Hunter, London Knights pulled it out. I give the same credit to Greg Marshall and his staff. Like, Laurier had every advantage. They had the coach of the year in Michael Faulds. They had the top player in Taylor Elgersma from London. So very, very excited to play at home and win a huge game for their program. And they walked dejectedly off the field again because they couldn't get it done. And they'll whatever happens, the Faulds and Elgersma, they'll regret that one, because that was one where Western, all year we've talked about Western's vulnerability. They squeaked out a couple of close wins against sometimes contenders, sometimes pretenders.
Mm-hmm.
They beat Queens with 13 seconds left during the regular season. And, Western did it again. They looked dominant. They raised their game at the right time. And it's really incredible to see.
Western's done really well this year, considering they lost a bunch of all-stars last year because they graduated. Was there a lot of team rebuilding this year? Were they developing new all-stars this year? Because the old reliables are gone.
Yeah. So what I would say is especially on the offensive line. So they lost 3 real studs on the offensive line. They graduated them, all Canadians: Elliot Beamer, Phil Grohovic, and Zach Fry. And these guys would just push people around. The defenders would come and bounce off them, and they'd be pushed, and they could run the ball. Keon Edwards, OUA MVP last year, running behind those guys. And this year it was a newer group. And then the guys have been waiting in the wings, so they got their chance. And they decided this year to throw the ball more, to use Evan Hillock. They had a good set of receivers, and they wanted to throw the ball more, so they did. And they kind of balanced, instead of just the run all the time, they balanced it with passing. And everyone was talking about, wow, look at Western's throwing the ball a lot more. But when the weather starts to turn in the playoffs, they always go back to the running game. And by then, they had some experience. And guys like Alex Berwick, who's the center, played at a very high level. They got a collection of 8 or 9 guys that go in there. Phil Jeffs and Cole McBride and all these guys go in there, and they're big dudes, and they started moving teams off the ball, and really good, experienced teams. And the key to me was Lucas grad Eric Anderson. He's the left tackle, and he got hurt in the Windsor game, so he'd missed 3 or 4 weeks, and that was really a concern above and beyond the losing your running backs. He's one of the guys that on the left end there, he just moves people off the ball. And he came back. He was able to make it back for this game. They were pretty patient with him. They were thinking about bringing him back for the Queens game, but they held him out that one extra week on the doctor's advice. And he came back, and he was dominant. Like, he's one of the best players in the game. And there was all kinds of wide open. They were running the ball right up the middle on Laurier, which nobody thought would be possible. This is a very good Laurier defense this year. And they ran the ball up the middle. And, it was again, a testament to Greg Marshall and what his staff can do.
There were a few injured players, like you mentioned. But a lot of them seem to heal just in time to get back for this game this weekend.
Yeah, and there, like I said, Anderson's one of those guys. There's Robert Panabaker came back a couple weeks ago, and he made some big plays in the defensive. He's a defensive halfback, so in that secondary. And when you're playing, so we'll get into Montreal in a bit, but when you're playing guys that can really pass the ball and all that, you need to have an elite back end, because and when you're playing good lines, you're not always going to get a pass rush on these guys, and they're gonna, if you give a great quarterback 4 or 5 seconds, or steamboats as we used to call them back when we played tag football out in the park or whatever. Like you give these guys time and they'll just pick you apart. And they're really, other than the running backs, Edwards and Yazbek, who are done for the season, they're relatively healthy. Now Hillock will be something interesting because he got hurt again. Kind of seems like a left shoulder. It's his non-throwing shoulder. He came back and threw the ball very well in the second half, so it doesn't seem like a concern. But still, we'll see. We'll see how he plays when he gets hit, right? Like we'll see what happens there. Now they got Jerome Rancourt, 6'5", from Quebec. So you're going to Montreal to play. He'll be jacked up to play, and he's the short yardage guy when they're down at the trying for 3rd and 1, or at the goalposts, at the goal line, trying to knock it in. He's the guy. But Hillock's been their guy for 3 years, and he's his health. I think he's got to have a very good game upcoming. If he gets hurt again, Western will be that's their biggest concern going in.
Yeah. Before we move on to the semifinal game, this was Western's 3rd year in a row winning the Yates Cup, and 35th overall for Western, which is a record for them. And Greg Marshall has won a lot too in his career, both at Western and otherwise. How many has Greg won?
Yeah, he's won 23, and there's been 115 Yates Cup. It's the oldest football trophy in North America, I think. Older than the Grey Cup. And he's won 23 out of 115. If you do the math, it's like 20%. So,
wow.
One out of every 5 Yates Cups, and we're going back to the 1800s or the early 1900s. He's got his name on there, like 1 out of 5 times, or his logo or whatever, the team logo he's with. And obviously, everybody knows the history. He played at Western. Was a great running back. Then he was helped Larry Haler. He was assistant coach, so won a bunch there. Then he went to McMaster and started his own program, and just like JP Cercelli in Windsor, just like Michael Faulds and Laurier, built it from the ground up, kind of thing. And they won 4 in a row from 2000 to 2003. I remember watching those teams, Jesse Lumsden, incredible teams. So now next year it'll be interesting. I know like Greg's going to keep coaching at least for the foreseeable future. He's in his 60s now, but he's won 23. It's mind-boggling, right?
He can't stop now. Can't stop now.
He's going to get to 25, right? But next year he's got a chance to, win his personal 24th, and that tie that McMaster team. Perhaps that'll be a goal, right? To tie the 4 in a row, which is like winning 4. We kind of think of Western as like really good, but if you look at through the history books, there's been droughts, right? There's been like 8 or 9 year droughts where they didn't win. So to have this guy come in and win like he has, and get over the hump with the Vanier Cup, win a couple of those, like it's really you gotta look at one of the great Canadian university coaches of all time.
Yes, of course. Let's talk about this weekend's game coming up against Montreal. So they're going to Montreal. Just looking at the rankings, this is going to be quite a game between Western and Montreal.
Yeah, I think last year we said that when Laval played Western at Western in the semifinals, we thought, yeah, this is probably the Vanier Cup. Like whoever wins this is going to probably win the Vanier Cup.
Right.
I don't know. UBC's probably, UBC's got a good program, so we'll see if this. But I mean, this is going to be. I'd be surprised if it's a blowout either way. I think it's going to be a close game. Like 29-14 against Laurier. I think, if you consider that a blowout, like that would be. I think it's within 10. And this Montreal program, it's right there with Laval. They played. I don't know if people in Ontario follow it much, but the Dunsmore Cup is the Quebec Championship. They don't have a lot of teams like in Ontario, but Laval and Montreal played in the last 10. Like it's just Laval versus Montreal. So they play the whole season. It's like, here we go again kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like if you think of Western, they beat Queens a couple times, and then they got Laurier this year. Max in there sometimes, different teams, Ottawa, Carleton. You don't know who you're going to play, but these teams in Quebec are built to beat each other. And obviously the Montreal coach used to coach for Laval, and there are rivals. But the interesting thing, Rachel, is Montreal, because like Western's played Laval a lot. Like I would say over the last 20 years, they're both awesome programs. Mm-hmm. Montreal and Western have just never played. And it's unbelievable to me that, this is the first time they'll ever play. And it's obviously in Montreal, which I'm told is, I've watched some of the games on TV a bit out east there, and it's sensational. I thought Laval had a pretty good environment, and the Montreal is second to none. And Western was talking about that. Like, we just can't prepare for that. But in football, as you know, you got to hear that. You got to be able to hear the snap counts, and line of scrimmage plays important. So you'll see if it's affecting them early, if they got some procedure penalties. But I tell you, Western last week against Laurier, 0 penalty flags. They didn't get 1 penalty flag. And that's unbelievable discipline in an emotional game, right? Like the Yates Cup is an emotional game. They're going into another emotional game in Montreal. And I like that they were aggressive and physical, but they didn't take any penalties. I mean, that's hard to beat. No matter how good your team is, it's hard to beat that kind of discipline.
True. Yeah. Talk about, the strengths of each team, Western and Montreal. What does Western need to focus on going into this game this weekend?
Yeah. So Montreal, the player of the year plays for the Caravan. It's quarterback Jonathan Senegal. And Greg Marshall, we were on a call earlier this week, and Greg Marshall said, this guy's like one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen in all my years of coaching. And really, you see the tape of him, and he flies around. He reminds me of Trey Ford at Waterloo a couple years ago, who ended up in Edmonton and like took the CFL by storm with the Elks, not a very good team, and he was worth the price of admission. This guy's Senegal's very similar. He runs the ball. He can throw all the passes. He's very good downfield, but he'll tuck the ball in and he'll get you 20 yards with his feet. So very, very difficult for the Western defense. But the Western defense has been playing better and better. They got some great linebackers, and that's kind of when a guy can take off like that. You need your linebackers. Riley McLeod in the middle has been an all-star all year, and they got some guys. Lorenz Bauer-Kane, who's from Quebec, he'll be jacked up to play here, and he's been making plays all over the field, especially in the playoffs. They got some real gamers there on defense. Jackson Finley in the free safety, a big free safety, can move, and he had 2 picks against Laurier. Very good player. So Montreal also has their work cut out for us. I thought it was funny because they could throw so well. That we're talking about the weather, and Greg's like, what the Marco, the coach of Montreal, Greg says, what kind of weather do you got for us? You got nice and rainy. Is it going to be rainy? And it's 50%, calling for 50% chance of showers, which Greg would like to keep the ball on the ground. And the Montreal coach said, no, we're hoping for sunshine and rainbows on Saturday. So they want to have a nice clear conditions for to be able to throw the ball and pass it. And obviously Western doesn't mind mucking it up if it's going to be rainy or snowy. They don't mind that with the running game. So
sure. So let's kind of talk about the Vanier Cup, because last year it was held here in London. Western didn't make it to the Vanier Cup. Where is it being held this year, and can we make it there this year?
Yeah, the next 2 years in Kingston. So when Western knocked out Queens, that ended in the semifinals. That ended the hope of having a home team. Western has, I like their chances. They're a bit of an underdog this year. I think even though they're ranked, they've been ranked, are undefeated and at the top. Missing a couple top running backs, having Hillock banged up a little bit. You wonder how they're going to go against that, like a football machine like Montreal, and win. But I never put it past these guys. I know they're hungry just as much as Montreal's hungry to rewrite their past of losing to Laval last year and Saskatchewan the year before that. Western lost to Laval at home and never got to play in the Vanier because they had to watch the Vanier Cup. I know a lot of them couldn't stand watching it. When Laval won it here, and a great crowd. Obviously, London should host again. Down the road, they wanted a 1 year kind of like experiment to see if it will work. And obviously everybody wanted the home team in, just like every place wants the home team in.
But
But
it was sold out last year. So
yeah, so it
we
sold
were
out.
happy
I
to
mean,
watch
they
it
would,
anyway.
if Western got in, they would have been hanging from the rafters, I think, and
Yeah, of course.
around the field. But it was a great environment, and I think Kingston Queens is a great traditional football market to Old Four like Western. So I think they'll do a great job, and it would be great to see Western Western in it. They got a big hurdle here. Like this Montreal team, people remember Laval. Like this team is head to head with Laval. Very,
Okay.
very, very good. So can they make it? I'd say it's like a coin flip. I wouldn't put it past Western because of Greg Marshall's coaching and the depth they have in their organization, but a real tall task this year.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to be watching your stories for sure at lfpress.com. We'll be watching your reporting, and go Mustangs. We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, if people want to follow on the site, we got the live blog going. That's always fun. So
yeah,
if people want to interact, and I'll answer some questions, or we can trade some barbs. No problem.
Good. This Saturday, lfpress.com. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem, Rachel.